Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ESSV Honors podcast. In this episode, we will talk with Ioannis about his experience regarding both the honors program and his research internship. So, Ioannis, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome. Can you please tell me a little bit about yourself?
My name is Ioannis Kavvadias. I studied 2 years of political science at the University of Amsterdam. When I dropped out in 2019, I came to Erasmus University here, and I studied the management of international social challenges. In the second year now, third year in September, and we just finished our honors program as well. So that's the status of me right now, and also I'm nearly done with the internship we have to do. So
Yeah, congratulations. And what made you apply for the honors program in the first place?
so there's a variety of reasons. First of all, when I studied in Amsterdam, I dropped out halfway, as I said, and I wanted to make amends to myself when I came to Erasmus. I felt like I underperformed, so I did put in a lot of effort to get a high GPA and everything. And when I got the invitation as well to participate in the honors program, without doubt, I just started writing my application and sent it. So that was the first reason, make amends, so to say, for dropping out my previous studies. Then the second thing mainly is the nature of the program. We deal uh, with wicked problems within the field of public administration. Like when you study MISOC or public administration, I think also psychology. In general, I think the ESSB is dealing with wicked problems, as a concept. And just for people that don't know, wicked problems are basically problems that require a variety of insights, a variety of paradigms to be used. If you have a family that's coming from a poor neighborhood, the economists will blame it on the money situation, the psychologists will blame it on the psychological situation, and so forth. So eventually, those people have to come together to see how to fix a family's problem. This is an example of a wicked problem, and this is exactly why the honors program is so nice. It touches upon the entire nature of ESSB, because we all have to deal with these, and the honors program works with this concept of interdisciplinarity. So when you go in there, you have the psychological. You're forced to go outside of your own field of study. You and I took a psychological perspective on certain issues such as psychedelics. Other people had to write on psychedelics from a sociological standpoint. So that's a good thing about the honors program. That's what I liked a lot, and that's why I applied. And besides that, it pulls you out of your comfort zone. You're going to get confronted. You're going to have a lot of debates, and that's good. That's nice, and I love good debate, and especially when you get challenged yourself. So out of comfort zone, interdisciplinarity, those two things as well.
Yeah, I fully agree. Just having the opportunity to be introduced with different fields outside of your own study was a really important aspect of the program indeed.
Exactly.
And what's been the most interesting part for you during the program, and why?
So the most interesting part for me was the session with the IND officers. So for the people who don't know, we had the second session we did in the honors program was about communicating research. So we would be talking about podcasts. You could use a podcast to communicate research, or you could basically, we had a LinkedIn coach, and she taught us about LinkedIn, how it works, how you can use it to upload your works and communicate your findings to your network. And the third session, there were two things about that session that were so interesting to me then. First of all, was the theme of immigration. The topic of immigration was about IND officers and how they handle, rejecting asylum seekers, accepting asylum requests, and so forth. And that was the first thing. And the second thing about that session was that the researcher that wrote her entire qualitative paper on the experiences of IND officers worked with her partner, who was more active in the field of theater play, to make a theater play out of it. And they transformed the entire paper she wrote and her findings on how IND officers feel into a theater play. And I think that was quite interesting, that you could see how outside the box one can go thinking when it comes to communicating research, because it was quite engaging. It's different than reading in a paper, or listening to a podcast. It was quite engaging, and it's it combines art and research. So that was what I found interesting.
Definitely, it was a really creative approach taken to research.
Exactly.
Okay, and you have mentioned that you were doing a research internship. How did you exactly end up with the research internship you are doing right now?
So yeah, there's another good thing about the Ioannis program, that once you apply, once you're in, you're required to do 100 hours of internship work. Internship has to be aimed at research. And the entire idea is to expose you to all sides of and aspects of doing research. So we were given a list at first, if you remember. This list would get updated, and a lot of the lecturers we had, or other teachers or tutors, they would, or PhD students, they would, look for interns, and they would update the list. You can look at it. Some of the internships were only for Dutch students because it was written in Dutch. Other internships were really related to a certain field of study, so psychology, for example. And that's the good thing. Like when I was looking at the list, I found an internship that was on domestic attitudes toward nuclear weapons. As a student of, political science and public administration and such, I find this quite interesting. But, and this is where it gets interesting, even more interesting actually, that even though it was an interesting topic, it was not exactly related to what I directly want to do later in my life. All right. So, and the coordinators did urge us to look for something that we are going to get something out of that comes down to our personal needs and interests. All right. So I didn't apply for the domestic attitudes on nuclear weapons one. I sat down with the coordinator, and we sat down and we spoke for 2 hours almost about what my plans are, what my academic interests are, what I want to do with my life. And based on this conversation, she pulled out her phone, looked into the people she knows, and she sent a message to one of the researchers at the ISS in The Hague. And 2 days passed, and I found myself having an internship on Muslim diasporas and their political mobilization, which is directly in line with what I want to do, because I want to apply everything I learned in public administration and a master in international relations on this region of the Middle East and all, But that's how I found it.
Yeah, exactly. We had the support of our coordinators, not only when we were trying to find an internship, but throughout the whole program. And I can confidently say that it was appreciated by all of us.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have mentioned that your internship was about Muslim diasporas, but can you please explain for the listeners what the research was exactly about?
Yeah, so simply put, in this research, it's a research proposal, by the way, so that's important to mention. It's the starting phase of a research paper. We looked at what drives Muslim diasporas in the Netherlands, Greece, Bulgaria, France, and the UK to vote for a certain party. Okay, so how do they politically mobilize themselves? Now, the important thing about this is to understand that when it comes to a theme regarding politics, we have to understand what the term politics means. Okay, so let me define it very fast. Politics, unlike most people that think it means something else, it actually means, collective decision making, or making decisions on who gets what, where, and when. All right. And this is important because when we look at society, when we look at the political system, and when we look at, for example, minorities of Muslim minorities or other ethnic minorities, or any kind of minority you could think of, we all are engaged in a system of a political system which decides how to share resources which are limited. Okay. So what we did in this research paper, in this research proposal basically, and what I did during this internship, we were looking how Muslim diasporas politically mobilize themselves in the face of, for example, rising Islamophobia or discrimination or systemic racism. These are topics that you hear a lot about. So what we would do is we would go look, first of all, we looked at all the parties that exist in the Netherlands. We start, I'll give the Dutch case as an example. We have two parties in the Netherlands that identify themselves as minority parties or minority interest parties, and NIDA, all right? Now, what we would do then is we would see how many of the Muslims in the Netherlands voted for these two parties, and then we want to find out the why. So we take these parties, we look at the history of these parties, where they come from, what was their background, how these parties get created, and we also look at the election program they had. The Netherlands had two elections, which involved these two parties, 2017 and 2021, actually a few months ago. And we would analyze the entire election program. We would look at what concepts they often mention. The racism, how often is that mentioned? Systemic racism, is that often mentioned? Islamophobia, pardon, is that often mentioned? We would look at how many pages this manifest has, or this election program, and what the first theme is that they address. And most of these, an interesting fact is that most of these parties, you can see what a party believes or finds most important based on what they mention first. The Greens will mention climate change as their first important viewpoint that they want to convince you about. And these two parties, the minority interest parties, talk about inclusion and acceptance. So this is kind of what we were looking at. This is also what the research was about.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So you have already briefly touched upon your tasks and what you have done in this research, but maybe can you explain more in detail the tasks you had as an intern in this research?
Yeah, of course. So basically, you apply for this internship and you get taken and you sit down with the coordinator, and they got to go over all the tasks, because the point of the honors program is to expose you to a lot of tasks and aspects of research. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you the bulk of the work, so to say. The bulk of my tasks was mainly utilizing a program called Atlas TI. All right, I think for my program, students, my program, listening to this episode right now, they just had qualitative methods. So mm-hmm. they'll know, and it's like a coding program, so you put in a transcript or you put in a text, and then the program allows you to create code groups of certain words, phrases that are important. So we would do this with all the election programs or the ideological manifests of these parties, and once we coded everything, we would look at the codes, and we would also look at the findings of, like how many sections are there. And we would translate this to either reports or summaries, on the history of the party, and you create a code tree or code book and see how they stand and what's often mentioned. Or we would translate it to an Excel sheet and compare all these election programs. So you'd see that, for example, if you had this Excel sheet, and I can't show you, but I can explain. Imagine you have the first column, which is the title of the election program. Then the second column would be the year it was written in. The third column would be the page numbers. How many page numbers are there? Then section. How many sections are there? How many viewpoints are there? How many times was the term, I said it before, right? How many times was the term systemic racism mentioned? What's the first thing they talk about? Denk, one of the parties we had to analyze in the Dutch case, in the two elections they participated, the first section was always about inclusion and acceptance. While the other party, NIDA, which identifies itself as a Muslim-inspired party, they dedicated the first 12 pages of their election program to explaining what they mean by Islamic inspiration. And these are the things we were trying to look at. These are the tasks we did as well. From these tasks, we moved on to making reports, looking at the news, looking at incidents, looking at parliamentary debates, and from all these, we'd write them out. I'd summarize them, I'd find other literature or academic literature backing up what happened or adding to it. And then we basically have this entire, accumulation of work, which we then look at and see how can this contribute to the theme or the research question of how do Muslim diasporas politically mobilize. So these are the tasks I had mainly. Also calling, for example, I also had to call several political parties and ask them if they could send me documents like old election programs. So yeah, you're going to get a lot of stuff once you do the internship. You're going to see almost every aspect of it, of doing research.
Exactly. So there are a variety of tasks and responsibilities that you have to accomplish as a student intern.
Exactly.
Yeah. And why is it important that this research is being done? So what would be the scientific and societal implications of the study that you are doing?
Yeah, so that's a hard question, I have to admit. So personally, the most important thing I'd say is that today in society you see Islamophobia being a recurring theme.
Hmm.
You see the term systemic racism, discrimination, racism, all these terms, they come up in the political debate, right? So based on these and based on what I said before, on defining politics, um, the fact is that in the system we live in today and the political system and democracy we have, people vote according to what they want to, what kind of representation they want, and that we have this mosaic, so to say, of political parties in parliament that reflect and represent every group of society. Muslim diasporas, while we like to think in the Netherlands, for example, that it's a melting pot, we don't differentiate between people. That's why we have Article 1 in the Constitution, which is no discrimination. We don't treat people differently on race, religion, sexuality, and so forth. Yet when we look at Islamophobia as a thing, it's a recurring theme, and we have two minority parties, two minority interest parties running for in the elections. It clearly shows that a big portion of the Dutch population, or the population of other countries we were analyzing, feels left out, and that there's a need for them to vote and represent themselves in a parliament because they're facing issues which leads to a mismanagement of uh, sharing resources or being outside of the collective decision making. So this is the most important thing. Like once we understand why people or people in the Muslim minority groups in every country we studied, in every case, act or vote in a certain way or organize themselves politically in a certain way. Once we understand that, we can see what kind of problems and implications they face, and then I believe that who knows, this kind of research can be used for policy making. So that's the most important thing. Very shortly summarized, but yeah.
Yeah, indeed, those are really recurring themes within our world today, and these were really great insights. So thank you. And how do you feel like this internship experience helps you both with your academic and professional career in the future?
Yeah. So on a personal level, I think this internship exposed me once again to time management and how important it is. The internship. It depends what you agree upon with your supervisor. Right? Like my supervisor said to me, you can fill in your own hours, and it's quite flexible. I didn't have to be on a call at 9 till 5 or something. Other people do have that. It depends on your supervisor. It depends on your program, your schedule. I mean, and so forth. So time management is a very important thing, and that's what exposed to me personally. That you know you have to manage to find a balance between, you have to do the honors program. Once a month you have sessions. You have a session once a month, and for those sessions sometimes you have to read 4 to 5 articles, if you remember. Um, you know, you have your regular program you're studying for. 40 hours required for full-time study program. You have extracurricular activities, and then you also have an internship that has to be 100 hours. You know, so
Yeah.
what I learned from this is I got exposed to time management again, and the need to organize yourself, schedule yourself properly, make schedules, plan the day, plan your tasks, and this is something you'll take with you no matter where you go. Like wherever in life ends up, time management is something useful, and always is going to be useful. Then when it comes to this internship helping me academically and professionally, I mentioned before I want to work within public administration on regions such as the Middle East or Eastern Europe or Central Asia. So this internship exposed me basically to do two things. This experience, it exposed me to research. And some people love research, other people are like, nah, and other people just dislike it. Now, I like it, but I don't like it enough to make a career out of it. So the good thing about this is that the honors program pushes you to go into a research internship, and then it's for you to decide whether this is indeed something you like or not. And if it's something you don't like, that's good. You know what not to focus on. You know. on the other hand, this internship helped me because, when you do this research, you get exposed to the topic, you read into it. And
Mm-hmm.
I can tell I gathered quite some knowledge, quite some academic literature. And this literature most likely will help out with my thesis at the end of the third year, even
Definitely.
with my work in the career I'm going to pursue. These are all
Mm-hmm.
findings. These are academic findings, so professional findings. And reading about this is it's an enrichment. And that's what I'll take with me. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's not only about stepping out of your comfort zone in your academic life, but also in your personal life and being able to find that balance. Indeed, yeah.
And yeah, once again, like because it's also prospective students listening, right? You do want to find the best thing is you find an internship that fits with you and you love doing it and you can make a career out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the good thing is that the honors program pushes you to do a research internship, and in the third year, most programs give you the opportunity to do an exchange, a minor, or an internship. My
Mm-hmm.
suggestion would be then, do the, fully engage and immerse yourself in this research internship. And if you don't like it, that's fine. You're going to go to third year, do another internship. That's what I'm doing as well. I'm going to do an internship at the embassy. That's way more practical work.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see if you like that. And if you do, that's good. Then you know what you don't like, what you do like. And if you don't like it, okay, you know which two things you don't like. So you know where not to look.
Yeah, definitely. You get the chance to gain experience within your field before you have that chance to do so in your studies.
Exactly.
So that's a really amazing aspect.
Exactly.
And now that this year is over, what are your plans for the future? You already mentioned that you're going to start doing an internship, but can you please explain more?
Yeah, so I'm gonna intern at the Embassy of Afghanistan in Athens. So that's gonna be a very interesting experience until November.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's gonna be quite some work, I know, but it's worth it. Then, yeah, well, I got my thesis in the third year at the end, all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be a lot of working on that. We still have courses, so finalizing the third year. And then it depends. I do want to do a master, but I also have military service back in Greece, mandatory. So
Mm-hmm.
likely I'll do that first and then come back to the Netherlands to do a master in international relations and diplomacy. And after that,
Mm-hmm.
let's see. Let's see what traineeships or job opportunities come up.
Yeah, I wish you all the best, and I'm sure that it's all going to work out perfectly.
Thank you.
So lastly, I would like to ask you, if you could give prospective honors students a tip, what would that be?
All right. First of all, when it comes to applying for the honors program, don't stress out too much about your average grade, your
Mm-hmm.
GPA, your GPA, because I stressed out, and I think everyone's stressed out about it.
Yeah.
And eventually, what they want to do in the honors program, they want to create a pool. They have a pool, and they want to create a group of students in the honors program. Usually, we're around 30 students, with all able to give a nice contribution to the program. So if you're going to apply, don't focus on your GPA. Focus on the extracurricular activities you did, the insights you have, the experiences you have. Did you go on a holiday somewhere and did you talk to locals? Put that in. If you feel like, if you can connect all the dots of everything you did in your life, and then you can basically communicate that in your application in the form of, this is a good contribution, a unique contribution, or a useful contribution I can give to the program, then you're set. It's all fine. You're all in, because the best example I can give is like in that session of the IND officers and immigration, session 3, we had a palette, so to say, of a lot of insights and a lot of opinions. We had students with migration backgrounds. We had students with minority backgrounds. We had one student whose father was an IND officer. I myself did refugee work for almost 2 years. And yeah, like these are all insights that, creates this friction of ideas, and you can get a more holistic viewpoint out of it all. You learn from each other because we all have perspectives. I can never understand what you went through until you explain to me, and the same goes the other way around. So again, like for the students that are going to apply for the honors program, apply for it no matter what your GPA is. Keep saying GP. No matter what your GPA is. Just apply and focus, not on the grade, focus on how you as a person with all your experiences and the dots connected, what you did, can contribute to the program. Then, if I may give a second tip, embrace the fact that the coordinators of the program are going to pull you out of your comfort zone.
Yep.
Embrace it. It's amazing. Not at the start. Not at the start.
There's a learning curve.
Exactly. Not at the start, but it's gonna be. You're gonna go home, and you're gonna be. There's basically put a mirror in front of your own viewpoints. And you're gonna reevaluate everything you thought you knew, and you're gonna see if you know enough to know you're wrong, or if you know enough to be able to understand where things come from, because that's the important thing. It sounds a bit basically. Again, it's the friction of ideas that creates knowledge. And that's why they want to pull you out of your comfort zone. I went into the session on psychedelics, if you remember, not knowing anything about psychedelics. I never want to do psychedelics. I never did psychedelics. I never will do psychedelics. So from a person like me, which is never exposed to it, I had some viewpoints. I had some opinions about it, which were not based on anything. Were really based on my experiences, with other people. That session pulled us all out of our comfort zones. And we went home, at least I went home, being like, oh, okay. Well, these were a lot of things I didn't know about it. And I readjusted my viewpoints on it, or I'm still busy thinking about this topic, So embrace the uncomfortable aspect of the Ioannis program. That's one of the things you should be signing up for, I'd say.
Definitely. I agree with everything that you have said. So that was actually the end of my questions for you today, but thank you so much for being here and for all your insights. I wish you all the best with everything, and I'm sure everything is just going to be the best. And thank you for everyone listening. Don't forget to follow our podcast on Instagram and LinkedIn for more episodes. And thank you.